US dollar bills are boring, hard to distinguish at a glance, and kinda ugly, but they could be so much better. The Dutch Gilder didn't have any of these problems because the designer got inspiration from an unexpected place.
The only banknotes that really inspired me, in fact, was play money, like the Monopoly money. And that is what I think is necessary for notes, too. I made things that you can easily see what you have in your hands. You can easily see they are very clear, they have a clear typography, they have a clear color.
That quote's from a designer named Ootje. He had the opportunity to design his first banknote for the DNB, the Netherlands' national bank, in 1964.
It was a real failure.
Ootje later recalled.
It was an awful design. Why? Because it was all new to me. I found myself in a strange position with the printing works. Not the bank which developed the techniques, but the printing works.
The printers told him things had to be a certain way, and ultimately he compromised his design for the sake of security, but this taught Ootje how to make a banknote. When the DNB offered a commission to redesign a whole series of notes, Ootje told them he needed all the security elements beforehand so he could design around them. He made a point to go all the way to the DNB president with his case. His response, according to Ootje, was, "If it is safe, okay. Your arguments are very intelligent and very reasonable, so I accept them." Ootje was going to revolutionize banknote design. The first note in his series was the 10 Gilder. Ootje thought notes should have more bright colors. He felt like notes, including his first one, had a muddy appearance. The printers told him notes needed to have black ink for security reasons, and besides, it has always been done like that. But by talking with ink and pigment makers, he discovered it was actually possible. The new note had innovative anti-counterfeiting measures like the gradient, which was hard to replicate at the time. The redesigned see-through register on the right contains printing quality checks and a device for sorting machines to check if it was printed a certain way. Ootje wanted to have these technical aspects stand out for the purposes of functionality rather than trying to hide them in the design. It was also the first note ever to have a font that allows for the numbers to be read by a computer. The note used vector plotting with computers in the design. The backs of the bills in the series also made full use of the new technology. There's a dot pattern on the bottom left, made with raised ink to aid the visually impaired. The portraits Ootje makes exaggerate physical features, making the faces distinct and cartoonish even. Ootje had to be careful because bold colors and cartoonish faces could make it feel too childish. Ootje's technique prevented him from going too far. He engraved the portraits in wood. It was a distinctive and centuries-old style, but blended into a modern note with computer vector art. Ootje also played a few pranks, without telling the DNB. The most famous of these was hiding his fingerprint on the 1972 1000 Gilder. Can you find it? The DNB does everything they can to prevent counterfeiting, but every bill's security will be cracked eventually. There was an unaccounted for counterfeiting technique that countered the anti-counterfeiting on the 100 Gilder note. They had to replace it, and fast. The bank wanted to pick a new person to go on the new note, but before they could, Ootje discovered something.
After we conducted some polls, it was clear that nobody knew who these people were.
In response, the bank asked Ootje to pick something himself. Ootje decided to just not do a portrait at all. Instead, the new note would feature a snipe. Aside from the new security features, people just really liked the snipe, and the bill became known as the snipe instead of the 100 Gilder. After the snipe's success, Ootje could propose anything he wanted. Ootje's next note, made in collaboration with Hans Kroot, was the 50 Gilder with the sunflower. At this point, Ootje knew how to hide security features in the design, so this note had a cleaner design. Ootje said in a lecture,
"The B was originally in another spot, but it had not been glued properly and it started moving inside the plastic folder. It landed on the flower by accident, and that's where it stayed. It flew there all by itself."
In another lecture, Ootje said if you run your fingernails across the matrix on the note's back, it buzzes like a bee. His final note was the 250 Gilder lighthouse, also made with Hans Kroot. Ootje said the lighthouse is a symbol of strength and safety to the Dutch. Many Dutch people think this is the most beautiful note ever. Aside from the colors, this note is unique because of the front's vertical orientation. Ootje's notes slowly went out of circulation, and the Gilder was replaced by the euro in 2002. Ootje submitted designs for the euro which were not used. However, euros don't have portraits, just like what he pioneered with the snipe note. When polled, Ootje's notes still rank as the most beautiful in the eyes of the Dutch public, particularly the lighthouse. Aesthetics are important, but counterfeit prevention is absolutely necessary for a banknote to function as money. I briefly mentioned counterfeit prevention, but it's such an important part of banknote design, we need to take a more in-depth look at a more modern example. For every security feature they add, the US government spends more than a decade researching, followed by years of testing. They do all this because even the slightest mistake would mean disaster. Here's a list of security features in US currency. If a bill doesn't have these, it's probably fake. Serial numbers appear twice on the front of the note, featuring a combination of numbers and letters. You can learn what they mean with the guide linked in the description. Microprinting is tiny text that appears to be part of a drawing from a distance. There's color shifting ink that changes color when the note is tilted. Watermarks are images that appear when held up to light. The security thread is a vertical line that glows a specific color when held under ultraviolet light. It's visible from both sides and says USA and the denomination of the bill in an alternating pattern. The $100 bill has a blue 3D security ribbon to the left of Ben's face that features bills changing to hundreds as you tilt the note. Now let's talk about some weird and/or ugly banknotes. These notes from the USSR all have basically the same design, so let's break that design down. They're all black and white or have one color on the front, and for most of them it's not even a good color. There's the denomination of the bill on the left that's on top of this wiggly blob thing for some reason. To the right is a portrait of Lenin in an oval. Enjoy looking at this for a moment because it's the only part of the banknote that doesn't look like you're having a stroke. On the back there's a bunch of colors and they almost go together. The colors don't fill the space, they're just lines with gaps between them. But when not seen up close, it appears to be solid colors that are slightly unpleasant to look at for some reason. The denomination's in the middle and it's on top of an even wigglier blob thing this time. On the corners of both faces of the note there's the denomination again, and they're all sideways. The Swiss francs from 2016 couldn't be verified because the new complex security features couldn't be detected by scanning machines. Mobutu, the dictator of Zaire, now known as the Democratic Republic of Congo, was overthrown in 1997. The new state was not stable enough to make new notes, so they just kept using the old ones, but simply punched out Mobutu's face. This brings up the question, why do people care who's on their money? Putting someone on a banknote is a way of honoring them, so if the type of person a society wants to honor changes, so should the note. As Plato said in his book Republic,
What is honored in a society will be produced there.
I haven't talked about coins in this video because there just isn't as much to talk about when it comes to design. Here's an honorable mention coin if you wanted one.
It was a real failure.
I laughed. Could you do it again?